My father canceled my PhD celebration 11 minutes before I walked into the hall. Not the kind of cancellation where plans change quietly and everyone feels sorry. He stood on the small stage in front of my professors, my classmates, my mother's friends, my cousins, and half the department, holding the microphone like a judge holding a sentence, and said, "Tonight's event has been called off. My daughter's achievement is under serious review." The room changed after that. You could feel it. Forks stopped moving. Champagne glasses froze near mouths. Someone near the back whispered my name like it was already a scandal. I was standing just outside the double doors in my navy dress, holding the speech I had spent 3 nights writing. In my purse, beside a lipstick and a folded tissue, was a silver fountain pen engraved with 2 letters nobody in my family knew mattered. E.V. My father thought those letters meant nothing. He thought the woman named on my doctorate was the only version of me that existed. But 8 minutes after he humiliated me in that hall, my phone rang from a blocked international number. A calm Swedish voice asked, "May I speak with Dr. Elian Vale?" That was not the name on my passport. That was not the name on the gala banner my father had just ordered taken down. That was my private research name. And by midnight, the same people who had watched my father cancel my celebration were standing in complete silence while the Nobel Committee's message played from the ballroom speakers. My name is Conrad Ellison, and for most of my life, I was raised to believe achievement only counted if my father could stand beside it. He was Professor Conrad Ellison. Not just Conrad, never just Dad in public. He liked the full title wrapped around him like armor. Professor Conrad Ellison, former department chair, senior fellow, keynote speaker, grant reviewer, editor, respected man. At home, respect meant obedience. At university, it meant everyone lowered their voices when he entered a room. He had built his career in molecular bioengineering, specifically cellular stress responses. He had written papers people cited. He had trained students who became important. He had a wall of framed certificates in his study and a habit of touching the edge of his glasses when he was preparing to dismantle someone politely. My mother, Elise, called him brilliant. My older brother, Adrian, called him impossible. I called him Dad, but only when nobody important was listening, because to him daughter was not an identity. It was a project. From the time I was 12, he told people, "Mara has potential if she learns discipline." If I got 96%, he asked about the missing 4. If I won a science fair, he wanted to know why my poster layout was uneven. If I cried, he told me emotional leakage was the enemy of serious minds. The only time he looked proud was when someone else was watching. At conferences, he would put a hand on my shoulder and say, "She's following the family line." The family line. Not my curiosity, not my mind. His line, "I did love science, though. That was the cruel thing. It would have been easier if I hated it and he forced me. But I loved the quiet brightness of discovery. I loved how cells had languages older than human speech. I loved that one microscopic change could decide whether tissue repaired itself or failed. When I was 16, my mother's younger sister died from an aggressive neurological illness that turned her body into a locked room around her mind. Her name was Elian Vale. Aunt Evelyn was the only adult in my family who asked what I thought before telling me what I should become. She wore red scarves, drank coffee too strong, and sent me secondhand books with notes in the margins. In one book, beside a chapter about protein folding, she wrote, "The body remembers what the room tries to silence." I did not understand it then. Years later, that sentence became the spine of my research. After she died, my father barely mentioned her. He said her disease was tragic but scientifically unremarkable. My mother cried quietly in the laundry room, where grief could not inconvenience him. I kept Aunt Evelyn's last fountain pen, silver, heavy, with EV, engraved near the clip. When I left for college, I packed it inside a sock. My father wanted me at his university, under his department, where he could guide the standards. I chose a different institution 2 states away. He called it rebellion. I called it oxygen. But freedom is not a door you walk through once. Sometimes it is a hallway where the person behind you keeps calling your name. During my undergraduate years, my father monitored everything. Course selections, internship choices, professors, conferences, recommendation letters. If I did well, he took credit for intellectual inheritance. If I struggled, he blamed distance, softness, distraction. When I applied for a PhD program in cellular repair mechanisms, I did not tell him until after I accepted. He was silent on the phone for 6 seconds. Then he said, "You should have consulted me. I wanted to decide for myself." That is not how serious careers are built. No, Dad, it's how mine is built. He laughed once, dry and small. Just make sure you do not confuse independence with importance. That sentence followed me into every lab I entered. For the first 2 years of my PhD, I worked under Dr. Salma Nadir, a Pakistani-American biochemist with silver hair, kind eyes, and the most terrifying standards I had ever encountered. She did not care whose daughter I was. On my first day, when someone mentioned my father's name, she said, "Good for him. Now show me your controls." I loved her immediately. She taught me how to think without performing intelligence, how to be wrong usefully, how to keep notes nobody else could misunderstand, how to protect raw data like it was a living thing. My dissertation focused on a rare stress response pathway in neural support cells. That sounds dry, but the simple version is this. Certain damaged cells send out distress signals before degeneration becomes visible. If you can identify the signal early enough, you may be able to interrupt the cascade before tissue loss becomes irreversible. It was not a cure. It was a doorway. But doorways matter. The project began because of Aunt Evelyn. I had studied her old medical records with my mother's permission and noticed repeated inflammatory markers dismissed as nonspecific. I wondered whether early cellular distress had been there before symptoms hardened into diagnosis. My father thought the idea was sentimental. When I told him about it during my second year, he leaned back in his leather chair and said, "You are building a thesis on grief. I'm building it on data. Data chosen because grief made you look there. Many discoveries begin with a reason to look." He smiled the way he smiled when a student gave an answer he considered beneath correction. Just don't embarrass yourself. I stopped discussing my work with him after that, or at least, I stopped discussing the real work, because by then there were 2 versions of my research life. There was Mara Ellison, doctoral candidate, daughter of Professor Conrad Ellison, presenting careful, approved pieces at department seminars. And there was Elian Vale. Elian was not invented for glory. She was invented for safety. In my 3rd year, I discovered a pattern in our cells cultures that did not fit our original hypothesis. Damaged cells were releasing a tiny protein fragment under specific oxygen stress conditions. It appeared before conventional markers. It repeated across 3 models. It showed up in archived samples from a partner lab. I took the first results to Dr. Nadir. She studied the charts for a long time. Then she said, "Who knows?" "No one. Keep it that way until replication." Why? Because early findings attract 2 kinds of people, helpers and hunters. You are not yet trained to tell them apart. I thought she was being dramatic. She was not. 2 months later, my father asked too many questions. It happened during winter break. I was home for 3 days, sleeping in my childhood bedroom under shelves still full of trophies he had arranged by prestige. I came downstairs one night for water and found him in the dining room with my laptop open. My laptop. He looked up calmly. "You left it unlocked." I did not. He removed his glasses. "Mara, don't be childish. I was looking for the travel itinerary you claimed you sent." My stomach tightened. On the screen was not travel information. It was a folder labeled EV, not his bike Bach. I reached for the laptop. He placed one hand on the lid. "What is Elian Vale?" I froze. "A private note system." "Why private?" "Because it's mine." His eyes narrowed. "Science does not belong to the insecure." "No, but unfinished work belongs to the person doing it." He watched me with new interest. That was worse than anger. Interest meant he smelled value. I took my laptop and went upstairs. That night, I moved every sensitive file to encrypted storage and began signing external drafts under the name Elian Vale, a quiet combination of Evelyn and the part of myself my father could not reach. Only Dr. Nadir knew. Later, one more person knew. Dr. Thomas Eriksson, a Swedish neuroscientist who ran a replication lab in Lund. He had worked with Dr. Nadir years earlier and agreed to test our findings blindly. He knew me as Elian because Dr. Nadir insisted on it. Until this is protected, she said, your father's shadow should not touch it. I felt ashamed that she understood so without my saying it. The breakthrough came at 2:13 a.m. on a Tuesday in February. I remember because the vending machine stole my last dollar, and I cried over that before I cried over the data. The Lund replication matched our findings. The protein fragment appeared early, reliably, across models. With a predictive window wide enough to matter, Dr. Erickson emailed 3 words first. You were right, then he sent the full report. I sat alone in the lab office, blue light on my face, Aunt Evelyn's pen beside my keyboard, and whispered, we found it. Not I. We Evelyn, Dr. Nadir, the cells, the patients who had left records behind. Every person whose body had tried to speak before medicine knew to listen. The next year was a storm of validation, submissions, patents, ethical review, licensing conversations, and quiet fear. We published under a consortium structure. Some early methods were attributed to me as Mara Ellison in my dissertation, but the deepest discovery trail, the preprint correspondence, the replication framework, and the protected intellectual package were under Elian Vale. It was unusual but legal. Dr. Nadir built the shield. The university's technology transfer office approved confidentiality until final filings. The reason was simple. There were disputes in the field, aggressive labs, and one senior academic with a known personal connection to the researcher. They never named my father. They did not have to. By the time my dissertation defense arrived, my work had already been circulating quietly among serious people. Not publicly, not loudly, but in the rooms where future prizes begin as whispers before becoming announcements. My father knew something had changed. He attended my defense wearing a charcoal suit, and disappointment disguised as dignity. During questions, he tried to corner me on an old pathway model he had published 15 years earlier. Would you agree, he said from the back, that your interpretation is derivative of established Ellison stress response architecture? The room shifted uncomfortably. Dr. Nadir looked at me, expression unreadable. I took a breath. No, I said. I would say my work diverges from that model at the pre-degenerative signal stage. The Ellison framework describes downstream response after visible stress consolidation. My findings address earlier fragment release under subthreshold oxygen disruption. A few professors nodded. My father's face did not move. He asked 2 more questions. I answered both. When the committee asked me to step outside, I stood in the hallway with my hands pressed together so tightly my knuckles hurt. I was not afraid of failing. I was afraid of succeeding in front of him and still feeling 12 years old. Dr. Nadir opened the door 20 minutes later. Her eyes were wet. Congratulations, Dr. Ellison. For 1 full second, I could not speak. Then I cried like a child. My father shook my hand afterward, not hugged. Shook, he said, competent defense. That was his gift, competent. My mother hugged me in the parking lot when he was not looking. I'm proud of you, she whispered. Will you say that dinner? She closed her eyes. Mara, that was the answer. The PhD gala was not my idea. The department planned a formal celebration for 3 graduating doctoral students receiving major research distinctions. Mine was the largest because my dissertation had won the university's highest prize, and an anonymous donor had funded a special reception. Anonymous donor. I knew it was Dr. Nadir. She denied it badly. The gala was set for a Friday evening in the old Medical Sciences Hall. Marble stairs, tall windows, a banner that said, "Congratulations, Dr. Mara Ellison." I hated how exposed it made me feel, but Dr. Nadir said, "You spent years shrinking so others felt tall. Attend your own celebration," so I did. My mother helped me choose the navy dress. It had long sleeves, a clean neckline, and a waist that made me stand straighter. She cried when I tried it on. "You look like yourself," she said. That meant more than beautiful. The morning of the gala, my father called. "I need to speak with you privately before tonight. I'm busy. It concerns your research integrity." My hand tightened around the coffee mug. "What did you do?" He exhaled sharply. "Do not use that tone. I received troubling information that portions of your work may have been submitted under another name." My blood went cold. "Who told you that?" "Answer the question." "No, Mara." "No, Dad. You don't get to interrogate me." "If you have concealed parallel submissions, The university needs to know. The university does know. Silence. That was the first moment he realized there was a door he had not been invited through. You are lying, he said. No, you are uninformed. He hung up. I stood in my kitchen, shaking. Then a message arrived from Adrian, my brother Adrian. Dad is nuclear. He says you used a fake name and he's calling people. My brother had left academia after one semester of graduate school and now repaired antique motorcycles in Vermont. My father considered him wasted potential. I considered him free. I called him. What exactly did he say? Adrian sighed. That you committed academic fraud, and everyone is covering it because Nadir hates him. She doesn't hate him. She might after tonight. I pressed my fingers to my forehead. How did he find out about Elian? I don't know. But Mara, listen to me. Dad doesn't get angry when he thinks someone failed. He gets angry when he thinks someone succeeded without permission. That stayed with me. I almost called Dr. Nadir, but she called first. Her voice was calm. Conrad has contacted the dean. My stomach dropped. Should we cancel? No, but if he... No, she repeated. You will come. You will wear your dress. You will bring Aunt Evelyn's pen. And you will remember that secrecy is not misconduct when every required authority approved it. What if he makes a scene? Then he reveals himself to more witnesses. I wanted to borrow her spine. I arrived early, but not through the front entrance. I came in through the side corridor near the faculty offices because I needed a minute alone. From there, I could see into the hall without being seen. The room glowed with warm light, tables covered in white cloth, flowers, faculty in suits, students taking photos, my mother near the front twisting her wedding ring. Adrian had flown in without telling anyone and stood at the bar in a black jacket, looking like trouble with good posture. My father was on stage. He was not supposed to be on stage. The dean stood beside him, stiff-faced. Dr. Nadir was moving quickly down the aisle, but she was too far away. My father tapped the microphone. May I have everyone's attention? My heart began pounding. He unfolded a paper. I regret to inform you that tonight's recognition of Dr. Mara Ellison must be paused. The dean reached for the microphone. Professor Ellison. My father turned slightly, blocking him. My daughter's achievement is under serious review due to concerns regarding unauthorized research identity, concealed submissions, and possible misrepresentation. Gasps spread like sparks. My mother covered her mouth. Adrian put down his drink. Dr. Nadir stopped in the aisle. My father continued, voice grave, almost sorrowful. As scholars, we must value integrity above sentiment, even when the person involved is our own family. That was the performance, not anger sacrifice. He wanted them to see him as a man so committed to ethics that he would publicly wound his own daughter for truth. The hall doors behind me seemed suddenly too heavy. My first instinct was to run, not because I was guilty. Because shame is physical. It grabs the body before facts can defend it. Then my phone rang, blocked international number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Hello. A woman's voice, precise and calm, said, May I speak with Dr. Elian Vale? Everything around me faded. This is she. My name is Ingrid Malm. I am calling on behalf of the Nobel Committee liaison office. We have been trying to reach you through Dr. Erickson. Are you in a private place? I looked through the crack in the door at my father destroying my name. No, I whispered. Not exactly. Dr. Vale, I understand this is unexpected. The committee is preparing formal communication regarding the Lasker Norden Emergency Nomination Review and related Nobel Advisory recognition. Your consortium's pre-degenerative cellular signal work has been selected for protected finalist consideration in this year's medical sciences deliberation. I gripped the wall. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? She did. Not because she was dramatic, because I had stopped breathing. Protected finalist consideration. My work, Elian Vale. The discovery my father had just called misrepresentation was being reviewed by the highest scientific body in the world. Ingrid continued. There are confidentiality restrictions, but given the academic dispute reported to us this afternoon, Dr. Erickson provided documentation confirming your authorized identity structure. We may send a verification statement to your university council if needed. I looked into the hall. My father was still speaking. The family is devastated, he said, but truth must come first. Truth, I almost laughed. Dr. Nadir had reached the stage now. The dean was whispering urgently to my father. The room was restless. I said into the phone, I need that statement now. Ingrid paused. Is the dispute active? Yes. Are you in danger? No. I'm at a public university event where my father is accusing me of fraud. Silence. Then Ingrid said, please provide the dean's direct email. I did. 3 minutes later, the dean's phone buzzed on stage. He looked down, his face changed, then his assistant's phone buzzed, then Dr. Nadir's. Then mine's subject line, verification of authorized research identity, Dr. Elian Vale, Dr. Mara Ellison. I opened the attachment with trembling fingers. It was brief, formal, devastating. It confirmed that Elian Vale was an authorized confidential research identity used in protected correspondence, connected to the pre-degenerative cellular signal consortium. It confirmed that the identity had been disclosed to institutional authorities, technology transfer offices, and international replication partners. It confirmed no misconduct had been found in preliminary review. It confirmed the work was under high-level prize consideration, and that public allegations could interfere with protected deliberative processes. At the bottom was Ingrid Malm's signature, and copied on the email were the dean, university counsel, Dr. Nadir, Dr. Erickson, and my father. My father's phone buzzed in his jacket pocket. He ignored it at first, then the dean took the microphone. Professor Ellison, step down. My father turned, offended. Excuse me? The dean's voice was low but carried. Step down from the stage. The room went silent. My father looked at his phone. I watched him read. I watched the color leave his face slowly, layer by layer. That sight did not feel like triumph. It felt like a storm finally reaching the house. Dr. Nadir turned and saw me standing in the side doorway. Her eyes found mine. She gave one small nod. Come, and so I did. The doors opened, and every head turned. I walked into the hall holding Aunt Evelyn's pen and the printed speech I no longer needed. The distance from the door to the stage felt endless. My heels clicked against the floor. Someone whispered, "That's her." Someone else said, "Oh my God." My father stood frozen under the lights. For once, he had no prepared expression. I climbed the steps. The dean offered me the microphone. My hand shook when I took it. I looked at the room, then at my father. "I was told tonight was canceled," I said. "Apparently, only the lie was." Nobody moved. My father whispered, "Mara, don't." That was almost funny. After everything, he still thought my silence belonged to him. I turned to the audience. My research identity, Elian Vale, was approved and documented through university channels, legal counsel, technology transfer, and international replication partners. It was used to protect developing work from premature exposure and conflicts of interest. One of those conflicts is standing beside me. My father flinched as if I had slapped him. I did not raise my voice. My father taught me many things, some intentionally, some by warning. He taught me that reputation can become an addiction. He taught me that brilliance without humility becomes hunger. He taught me that a person can love your achievement only when it reflects them. My mother was crying now. Adrian stood near the back with his arms crossed, face pale and proud. I lifted the silver pen. These initials belong to my Aunt Evelyn Vale. She died before medicine knew how to hear what her body was trying to say. My work began because of her, not because I wanted to extend a family legacy, because I wanted to listen where others dismissed noise. Dr. Natter's eyes shone. I looked at my father again. "You called my private name fraud because you did not own it." His lips parted, but no words came. Then the dean stepped forward. "Dr. Ellison, with your permission, I would like to read the verification statement." I nodded. He read it aloud. Every formal sentence landed like a door closing. Authorized identity, protected research. No misconduct, international replication, prize consideration, high-level committee communication. By the end, nobody was looking at my father the same way. That is what evidence does when it arrives clean. It does not need to scream. It rearranges the room. My father stepped back from the microphone. For a moment, I thought he might apologize. Instead, he said, "I was acting on incomplete information." That was his instinct, not remorse, revision. Dr. Nadir took the microphone from the dean. "No, Conrad," she said, calm as a blade. "You acted on entitlement. The room inhaled. She continued, "You contacted the dean with accusations before contacting the candidate's supervisor. You attempted to stop a university event without review. You publicly implied misconduct without evidence. That is not caution. That is abuse of status." My father looked as if she had become unrecognizable to him. Power hates being named by someone it cannot dismiss. University council arrived 5 minutes later. The gala did not resume immediately. People stood in clusters, whispering. The caterers hovered awkwardly near the dessert table. My mother approached me once, then stopped when Adrian stepped between us. "Not now," he said. She looked at him as if he had betrayed her. Maybe he had. Maybe betrayal in families sometimes just means refusing to protect the wrong person. The dean asked me privately whether I wanted to cancel the evening. I looked around at my classmates who had worked themselves sick for years, at Dr. Nadir, whose reputation had been dragged into my father's performance, at the banner half removed by a staff member who now stood frozen with one corner in his hand. "No," I said, "put the banner back." The dean almost smiled. The banner went back up. Dinner was cold by then, but nobody cared. The speeches changed. The official program was abandoned. My classmates spoke from the heart. Dr. Nadir told the story of my first failed experiment and how I wrote a better failure report than most people's success summaries. Adrian gave an unscheduled toast. "My sister survived our house and still became generous," he said. "That is the doctorate I respect most." People laughed softly. I cried. My father did not stay for dinner. He left with 2 members of university council and the dean, not arrested, not dragged out. This was academia. Consequences wore blazers and spoke in policies, but by the next morning, he was suspended from advisory duties pending review. By Monday, he had resigned from 2 editorial boards. By Wednesday, 3 former students had contacted the university ombuds office with stories of their own. That part surprised me at first. Then it didn't. Public power rarely harms only one person. It just waits for one public crack. My mother came to my apartment the following week. I saw her through the peephole holding a small paper bag from the bakery I liked as a child. For a second, I almost did not open the door. Then I did, but I left the chain on. She looked older. Not fragile, exactly. Exposed. "I brought almond croissants," she said. I stared at the bag. Dad hates almonds. I know. That tiny rebellion would have moved me once. Now it only made me tired. "What do you need, Mom?" Her eyes filled immediately. "I wanted to see you." "You saw me last Friday. That was different." "Yes." She looked down. I should have stopped him. I waited. I knew he was going to say something. Not all of it. But I knew he was angry. "I thought if I stayed quiet it would pass." "That's what you always think." She flinched. "I was afraid of making it worse. You made me face him alone my whole life because you were afraid of making it worse." Tears slid down her face. "I am sorry." I wanted to ask why sorry always arrived after the damage became visible to others. Why mothers who could read a room perfectly in public somehow missed their daughters shrinking at dinner tables. Why she had pride enough to praise me in whispers but not enough courage to protect me out loud. Instead, I said, "I believe that you regret it." Her face crumpled. "That's not the same." "No." She nodded slowly. "Can I come in?" "No." The word hurt both of us, but it also stood. She left the croissants at the door. I threw them away. Not because I hated her, because I was done eating apologies shaped like childhood. The Nobel part became complicated. People hear that word and imagine a golden door opening. In reality, it became months of confidentiality, calls, verification, media preparation, speculation, and pressure. We did not win that year. That is important. Stories lie when they turn every wound into a trophy. But the committee communication itself changed the field. It protected the work from being buried under my father's accusation. It forced the university to publicly clarify that Elian Vale was authorized. It brought funding, replication partnerships, and a clinical pathway study. A year later, our consortium received a major international medical prize. Not the Nobel, but one that mattered deeply. Dr. Nadir insisted I accept under both names. So I stood at another podium in another hall with Aunt Evelyn's pen resting beside my speech. This time, my father was not invited. My mother watched online. Adrian sat in the front row wearing boots that did not match his suit, Dr. Erickson flew in from Sweden and hugged me like a proud uncle. Ingrid Malm sent a short note. Some names are private until history needs them. I kept that line in my speech. I said, science is often described as a search for truth, but truth requires conditions. Safety is one of them. Many brilliant people hide parts of themselves not because they lack integrity, but because someone powerful has mistaken access for ownership. Afterward, a young doctoral student found me near the exit. She was holding the program with both hands. My advisor takes credit for my ideas, she whispered. I thought that was just how it works. I looked at her and saw myself at 24, tired, brilliant, almost convinced that survival required silence. No, I said, that is how it continues. Not how it has to work. That became the real prize. Not the headlines, not the invitations, not even the committee call. The real prize was becoming visible enough that someone else could stop disappearing. My father sent one email 6 months after the gala subject. Clarification, of course, not apology. Clarification. He wrote that he had been under extreme stress, that the irregularity of my research identity created reasonable concern, that his public phrasing may have been imperfect, and that history would judge his intentions more fairly than the university had. I read it twice, then I printed it and placed it in a folder labeled Not Evidence I Need. After that, I deleted the email. 2 days later, I wrote him a letter I never sent. Dear Dad, you taught me to defend every claim with proof. So here is mine. I was a child when I learned to measure my worth by your silence. I was a student when I learned that praise from you always came with a receipt. I was a scientist when I learned to hide my best work from the person who should have been safest. You called my secret name dishonest. But Elian Vale was the first honest room I ever built. I hope one day you understand that losing control of me was not the same thing as losing me. You did the second when you punished the first, Mamara. I folded that letter and placed it beside Aunt Evelyn's pen. Not all truths need to be mailed. Some only need to be written so they stop living inside your body. Life became quieter after that, not small, quiet. I moved into a sunlit apartment near the botanical gardens. I mentored students. I learned to cook meals that were not eaten over lab notebooks. I started taking long walks without turning them into productivity. I let people celebrate me in ways that felt awkward but honest. My mother and I speak, sometimes, carefully. She is in therapy now. I do not say that as a miracle. Therapy is not a redemption arc unless the person does the work when nobody claps. But she has begun naming things differently. She says, I stayed silent because I was scared. Instead of, I didn't know what to do. That matters. Adrian visits often. He pretends to hate academic events and then asks the best questions in the room. Dr. Nadir retired from full-time teaching but still sends voice notes that begin with, I have one small concern, which means I should cancel my evening and prepare for intellectual surgery. And my father? He still gives lectures sometimes. Smaller rooms. Fewer invitations. He is not ruined. Men like him rarely are, but he is no longer unquestioned. That is enough. One winter afternoon, I visited Aunt Evelyn's grave for the first time in years. The cemetery was quiet, the grass silver with frost. I brought red tulips because she hated lilies and said they smelled like formaldehyde and guilt. I stood there with my hands in my coat pockets and told her everything, about the gala, about the call, about Elian, about how her name had traveled farther than either of us imagined. Then I placed the silver pen on the stone for a moment. I borrowed your initials, I whispered. I hope that was okay. The wind moved through the trees. There was no sign, no movie answer. Just cold air and my own breath. But I felt something loosen. For years, I thought my private name was a hiding place. Now I understand it was a bridge between the girl my father tried to define and the woman I became when nobody was allowed to interrupt the work. So if you have ever had someone cancel your joy because they could not control your success, remember this. The celebration is not the achievement. The approval is not the proof. The loudest person in the room is not always the authority. Sometimes your real name is the one you build in secret. Sometimes the people who call you dishonest are just angry they were not given the password. And sometimes, when they take the microphone to bury you, the call that saves you is already on its way. The question is, When your private name finally rings, will you be brave enough to answer?